We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hello, everybody. We are in for a Trentless episode, but not for the normal reason we have Trentless episodes. Folks, before I tell you what I've eaten most recently, I'm going to have to tell you such an embarrassing tale of Parth incompetence, a rare case. Trent and I we're on a call for about 40 minutes, which is what Zoom gives you for free, and recorded an intro for next week's episode because we totally forgot our release order schedule. And so instead of recording the intro-outro for the Iron Claw Part 2, which you are presumably listening to currently, we recorded the intro to next week's episode. But this is all kind of my fault because I misled Trent and said, no. We're recording next week's episode. Guys, I was wrong. We were not, in fact, recording next week's episode. And I only came to this realization as I was editing next week's episode and just about to upload it to be released the day this episode is coming out, and realized we have not released part 2. So I sit here humbled to ask for your forgiveness for our incompetence, which, to be fair, I don't think I really need to, given that you are getting the correct episode. But just so we follow our format, what did I have most recently? Well, you're going to have to actually listen to next week's episode to hear the more interesting tale of what I've eaten more recently. But so that I had some more content for you people, because I'm in the content business now, I actually consumed something else, and I had some chai with my father. I had not seen him for a while, and not because he wasn't there, but I was out and about. But yeah, so I had some chai, and it was good, because my dad made it, and he always makes good chai. But what's also really good is our intro. Cue it, Trent! I mean, I edit these episodes, but anyway. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week, we are continuing on with our interview with Richard Reed Parry, composer of The Iron Claw. This one was really cool. We talk more about some specific scenes. We talk about his work on other films. And again, Richard Reed Parry, just a cool stand-up dude, if I've ever seen one. Very cool. So yeah, I kind of don't want to put too much in between the listener and this interview. So
I'm wondering, is your process of scoring, like live scoring at all, where like, say you're watching a scene and he goes up onto the ropes and you're like, okay, the stakes are rising here, I need to crescendo? Or is it all more like thematic and then later it's like the pieces are Frankensteined into place and it's like, they're like, oh, there's a rise in the song here, we'll add that after, rather than you composing the music for like exact moments?
It's a little of both. Sean tends to like scoring the interior worlds of characters more than he likes to be scoring the action. And so there's lots of times where I would do something and he'd be like, this is great, like this is a great piece of music, but it's like, it's too involved in the scene. Actually, what we need to bring attention to is what's going on inside of a character. And we'd run up to that, against that, all the time. Whereas like, you think the scene is telling you one thing, and it is from a certain perspective, but the angle that he wants to to look at is something else. He wants to be pointing to something else than the action. And so in the case of like the wrestling matches, and in fact the opening music, because it is actually a wrestling match, even though it's sort of in slow motion and it's the opening sequence, the wrestling matches, the stuff that's happening in the ring, was done kind of to picture, and there is a bunch of, okay, he's going up on the ropes, let's bring up the energy, or let's do something that's, that's more of a Bugs Bunny approach, where you're like, okay, he's going up, let's go up. He's going down, let's go down. Like he's body slamming the guy, let's make it happen, but not in a like totally cartoonish way, but yes, with an attention to kind of kinetic, visceral energy happening on screen and supporting that or underlining that where it needs to happen. And then other times it'll be too on the nose, and we'll veer away and say, okay, let's let that, let's let that not feel totally Bugs Bunny. And so you end up hopefully in some kind of a balanced place that feels like it's supporting the energy, and with moments of cool, kind of underscore and, really accenting moments, but it not feeling like it's too cartoonish. And then likewise the opposite, where it's like, I think sometimes the best stuff comes from you just make an idea. Well, I spend much more of my time early in the process just making ideas and making pieces of music that have their own interior life as a piece of music, and I don't watch the film. I watch the film once, and then that's it for me for a while. I watch the film, I watch a cut or I read the script, and then I just like to make a lot of music that just comes to mind as I'm trying to open the floodgates to what the possible musical world of the thing could be, and just let as many ideas fly out on their own early on in the process, so that then you start to adapt them to screen and see what sticks and what connects emotionally. And then when you do need to Bugs Bunny it and work to picture, you do, and you adapt things, and you go, okay, we can add a little flourish here, add an instrument there, move these drums around so they do something specifically to scene. But I like to try and write music that's strong as music. I always think about, when I take on these projects, I have to want these films, like it has to feel like it's an album that I want to make for me to be able to even step into it and begin. So I'm kind of thinking from that perspective the whole time as well. And whenever the filmmaker is pushing back and trying to make these decisions that make it maybe work better to picture, but what might be to my ears a lamer piece of music, I'm always really stubborn about that stuff. I'm like, no, that is worse music. We can't do that. Like, we'll do something else that sidesteps that. But when you start to compromise the internal movement, the internal dynamics, the internal life of the piece of music, I think you start to compromise the overall thing, like the overall picture, and therefore the film. And the music needs to have its own internal emotional life that's kind of autonomous, that isn't just, going spooky every time the picture is spooky and going sad every time the picture is sad. There's some of that, obviously, but I think music, you need to focus on the, it's also like, I'm not scoring Star Wars or Indiana Jones here. It's not a wild motorcycle chase across the mountains or whatever. And that's a whole other level of scoring, and which I could be interested in pursuing one day, but where I'm at right now, it's not really that level of whatever, Fantasia style scoring, if you will.
Sure. I mean, it seems like you and Sean Durkin have like a very healthy collaborative relationship, but were there any times where, like you were saying, of like where a director might want to push for something that you think does not fit what you want from the score? Were there any moments while working on this where there was sort of a brush up with that, and like where and how did that sort of resolve?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's a few of them. There's one major one where it was like, I really felt like we needed to score, like close to the end of the Iron Claw. Sorry, spoiler alerts, but if
by
if
this
you're
point,
here-
it'll have been out for a few weeks, so I think it's on the listener now. Yeah.
Right. Well, so the end, all the brothers but one die. Spoiler alert. And so the final death, the brother named Carrie, he kills himself, and we just struggled with that scene till the very end. And in fact, they reopened it after the picture had already been locked and kept working on it more, and it kept dragging on, and it was really like the final challenge to unlocking the whole thing. And we really disagreed about what the approach needed to be. I really thought the action needed to be scored, and was doing so, and then redoing it, and I kept scoring this whole long action sequence of Kevin driving to try and find his brother, and then finding him, and then the dad coming, and them fighting in the dirt, and then him carrying his dead brother over the threshold, and then watching his dead brother kind of move into the afterlife. And that was one long, really dramatic, like dynamic, involved action sequence for me. Like I really wanted to, musically, I wanted the film to culminate in that kind of an action sequence as well, and it was really hard, and we were going, and Sean kept kind of wrestling with it and wanted me to try different things, and so I was just adapting it, and eventually he tried replacing what I was composing for that section with music that we'd heard earlier for the funeral, which is super minimal, way less of like I would say like a clear musical narrative, and much more opaque, and like again taking us just into the interior world of the character, not into the action of the sequence. And we just struggled with it for a long time, and in the end, like I think it works really well and does something really beautiful. What we settled on, which is extremely minimal compared to what I scored, and I just like worked for days and days and days and days. I couldn't even tell you how many days I worked on a much more action-based sequence of music for that bit, and we just kind of disagreed about it until the 11th hour. But I think it works really beautifully, like how it ended up. But it was, it's kind of just when it's a question of sensibility, where you're like, yes, this musically works, but this is not, for the director, this is not what he wants to achieve. Like he doesn't want it to achieve a kinetic musical peak. He wants to be alone in silence with the raw emotions of the characters, and then he just wants to point to little, sort of more intimate feelings and sad reoccurring feelings that are happening, and that's where we ended up with it. You go head to head, and you have disagreements, and we wanted a fundamentally different approach to the same scene, and obviously it's his film at the end of the day, and so I work with that to try and figure out, well, okay, what can we do here to also have it feel like it's musically satisfying to me, even if it's not doing what I would have it do if I was directing the film. And you just have to. That's the nature of collaboration. Also, it's a give and take, and it's a tug of war sometimes. And thankfully, like I'm really happy with how the film turned out. It's not like they turned it into something I was embarrassed of or anything like that. I think it's a great piece of cinema. And I haven't, I'm a few films in. I haven't come up against anything yet where I completely disagree with what the director wants and can't see it and can't get into it and have to, go against my own will and begrudgingly do something. I haven't gone there yet, and hopefully never will have to, but probably inevitable. Who knows? But I definitely like feeling like I'm on the same page with the director, and like we have some sort of a shared vision and a shared sensibility, and try and just work with people who want to let me do my own thing, and who are pleased to have it go in whatever direction I want to run with it to begin with. So
we were wondering if there is like a track or like a specific moment that you're most proud of in the film, or if just musically or life-wise, there's anything you learned that you'll take onto the next movie or onto the next thing in life.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would take a lot of what I learned on this film, which was really, exactly what I was just talking about, like that it's always, you can really play things in totally different ways in a film, and by pivoting from scoring action to scoring an interior world, you can really open the film up and open the story up and open the emotions of the thing up in a totally different way. And not that we kind of did that on The Nest as well, but The Nest is not an action movie, and so it wasn't begging you to score these action sequences. So it didn't feel like it was a radical approach, doing that on The Nest, taking this more of an interior relationship musically. But I'll keep that with me forever. That's like a really, it's kind of like a basic, it's almost a starting point. It's like, okay, what do we want to score? Are we scoring the inner world? Are we scoring the outer world? Are we scoring the even the unseen world beyond the outer world that we're watching? Like, this kind of like micro, macro, from the left, from the right, and that's been a real great learning experience working with Sean. Specific moments of this film that I feel especially proud of, I would say, I think the opening is really great. I think that was the first part of the film that they finished, like they nailed right out of the gates. I think was that the opening title. That was the first scene that they sent. That was where it was like, this is the scene, like this is how it's going to be. And they did little minor tweaks in it, but it was like they really nailed that starting sequence. And I feel like the music for that is really, really captures something, and in terms of like era, as well as the action of it, as well as the kind of musical ideas and the emotional feeling that it plants. In terms of a film about wrestling, I think it's pretty cool to have this kind of epic and dark, lumbering, a little bit terrifying piece of music opening this particular movie. And we kind of found that fairly early on in the process too, in a way that felt like we were standing on solid ground out of the gates with that. So I'm pretty proud of that opening sequence. Also, kind of the most fun moment of scoring the whole thing was we basically had to replace real WCW music that they use like for the kind of like main event, Saturday night main event music and the update desk. And that they had like real clips in originally. They had these two actual, VHS clips that they'd put in there, and that was real original music, but they weren't allowed to use that, because of sort of licensing things. And so they were like, okay, we need you to make something that does what this does and sounds like it is the real thing. And, so that's like two, just mini pieces of music, like kind of 45 seconds each. And then that was definitely the most fun part of the whole process. It was like imitation is it's a pretty good strong suit for me, imitating things, or trying to copy pieces of music. And I wasn't directly copying what was there, but that was kind of the starting point, and that's actually really fun for me. It's like, okay, what's happening in this this wrestling promo moment, and what can we do to borrow something of what's going on and do our own thing enough that nobody's going to sue us, and make it feel legit and like it's of the era. And so those two little blips in the middle of the film are I'm pretty proud of.
So I guess, Trent, are you okay if I move on a little bit from Iron Claw talk?
Parth, you can move on.
Yeah, so you also scored another film that's getting released, or has been released this year, Eileen. So if you could talk a little bit briefly about working on that this year.
Yeah, that was another awesome piece of cinema that I was super stoked to work on. That's directed by William Oldroyd, who directed Lady Macbeth, which is a really great film. And it's also a period movie, kind of noir. Both of them are kind of noir in a way, period movies. Also, this one's set in the 60s, starring Anne Hathaway and Thomasin McKenzie. And yeah, it's based on a book that I really like by Otessa Moshfegh, and it's kind of a noir drama mystery. Not really a mystery, I guess, but seems like it's a mystery. Kind of a suspense of sorts that has a trajectory that you think is going in one direction, and then at a certain point, kind of 2/3 of the way through the film, I won't do an actual spoiler alert, but it just takes a wild left turn, and then never turns back, and it sort of leaves a lot of questions unanswered, and from a certain perspective of typical movie narratives and movie storytelling, it just like totally abandons the things that one expects a movie to do in a way that is great and like shocking and surprising and very atypical. And it's a really unique piece of cinema. And I scored that before I did the Iron Claw. And what else? It's a more music forward film, I would say, than the Iron Claw. There's a lot more score in Eileen. And I was doing more action scoring in that one, I would say, overall, but also lots of interior emotional score as well. And yeah, really fun process. It was, once again, I was really given carte blanche to pretty much do what I wanted by the director. He just knew that he wanted there to be a tenor saxophone and an oboe, and he was like, and other than that, do what you want, which was great for me. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've not done that before, and there is indeed a bunch of tenor sax and a bunch of oboe, and upright bass and flute and bit of French horn and tenor sax and percussion. And yeah, it's got kind of a noir 60s-esque chamber jazz vibe to it. And once again, I was sort of trying to make a score that you could think this is from that era. This is actually from that time, but without it actually sounding like any specific music of that time. So not trying to be like retro or pretend to be this 60s music, but I wanted to pay attention enough to everything about what I was doing that if you heard it, you could think, when is this from? Like, is this actually from the 60s? Maybe it is.
I have one right before the Big Kahuna final question. But I was just going to say, you have an upcoming composer credit on IMDb for Adrian and the Castle. I'm looking, I looked at the picture and there's a frog man, and that looks cool. That looks cool. If you could speak on that at all, if that's what's coming out next.
Yeah, that is what's coming out next. I don't think I'm allowed to say anything officially about what's happening with the release yet, but it'll be announced soon. But it's a really beautiful, half documentary, half scripted piece of work about these an amazing couple that built a castle that's still being built in the Midwest, not very far from Chicago, and just lived a really remarkable, colorful, strange, and beautiful life in an area of the country that is not not that remarkable or strange or beautiful. Lived a very, very colorful, creative, inspiring existence, and yeah, it's a documentary. It's kind of about creativity and love, and it's also about loss and grief and how to keep going in life, even when the centerpiece of it is pulled out from under your feet.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds super cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Really, really unique piece of work.
Trent, is it time?
I think it's time.
So our big kahuna final question is, what is the last great movie you watched? And it can be a rewatch or a new release, but it has to be great.
Has to be great. Okay. I mean, to be honest, I just went and saw both Eileen and the Iron Claw in the cinema and enjoyed both of them greatly. And I think both of those films are like really excellent pieces of cinema. So that's my first answer. I also saw The Holdovers, which
good movie.
I loved. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good movie. Like very soft spoken, sort of accomplishes a lot in a kind of a underspoken kind of way, in a way that I really appreciated and hadn't seen a film that kind of subtle and subtle and soft spoken in quite some time. I deeply enjoyed that.
I think that was great. Trent, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, thank you so much to our gracious guest, Richard Reed Parry, for coming on. He's worked on such cool films as The Nest, Eileen, and our film for today, Sean Durkin's The Iron Claw. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Wow. What an interview. Right, Trent? Never gets old. Yes, thank you so much to Richard Reed Parry for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time. You're a super cool guy, and we think you're so awesome. Because you are. We hope you enjoyed part 2 as much as, if not more than, part 1, because I certainly did. But what I think you might enjoy even more, now that you've finished parts 1 and 2, obviously, is some more content. Again, we're in the content creation business. And I'm happy to say that next week's episode is already fully edited and ready to be uploaded. We are talking with the cinematographer of one of my favorite films of last year, Past Lives. We're talking to cinematographer Xavier Kirchner. It's another 2-part interview. It's pretty freaking cool. And if you're cool, you're going to go listen to it. So you can go check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts, we're available. And you can also check us out on Instagram and Twitter to get some updates. Other than that, thank you so much for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye.